That's right, you read that correctly. It's finally time for my triple review. That's 3, count 'em. 1, 2, 3 reviews in one. Those 3 reviews being for American Reunion, The Avengers, and Dark Shadows. 3 films which I originally meant to give their own reviews, but for one reason or another never got around to it, so I'm doing it now. Now I realize these are 3 very different types of films, though the first 2, American Reunion and The Avengers, do have something in common. They both feature large ensemble casts and have multiple films before them to properly establish and develop their characters. As for Dark Shadows, we all know who the star of that one is, so let's just begin. Is it me or have they all aged incredibly well since the original trilogy? Either way, American Reunion is a very appropriate title as it's the first time they managed to get the entire original cast together since American Pie 2. It's also the first official sequel since American Wedding, so please just forget all those direct-to-DVD spin-offs, they're not worth your time. Either way, we got back our entire original cast, including Jim Levinstein, our leading man, once again played by Jason Biggs, and he's still lovable and oh so clumsy. And he's still married to Michelle, played once again by the always lovable Allison Hannigan, who is still a bit of a band geek at heart. Luckily, both are back to being among our most prominently featured characters, as I felt in the third film, American Wedding, they kinda took the back seat to a subplot between Stifler and Finch, who returned once again for this one, played again by Seann William Scott and Eddie K. Thomas, and they are just hilarious as ever. Rest assured, the rivalry has not ended. Not to mention, this film also reintroduces Oz, played again by Chris Klein, who has not appeared since American Pie 2. So they did have a bit of a challenge there reintroducing him, and it turns out he's now a news reporter, an anchor, and I felt that that was a very mature position for them to put him in, because before he was really into sports, and it looked like he was going to be an athlete, but no, now he's kind of just discussing this from the sidelines. And I think that gives him a whole new level of maturity, you know? He's not just this jock anymore. So I like that. He also has a girlfriend now, a younger woman, and it's not Heather. Nope, even though Mina Suvari is back, Heather and Oz are not together in this one. However, having both of them be reintroduced does make for some interesting scenes and circumstances. Not to mention Heather has a new boyfriend now too. Also reintroduced is Vicky, played again by Tara Reid, and what with her reintroduction, the character of Kevin, played again by Thomas Ian Nicholas, now feels like he's part of the main cast again, as back in American Wedding, which did not feature Vicky, he was only really there to support Jim, and he really didn't do anything significant. This is especially interesting as Kevin is now married, so you might want to watch out for those sticky situations. Don't want to have any of those old flames arising again. Can't you just be friends? And I also can't neglect to mention the one actor who's just can't seem to stay away from this franchise. He's even been in all of the DVD spin-offs. Eugene Levy. Back again as Jim's dad. Even he gets moved forward in this one, as, minor spoiler here, Jim's mom passed away 3 years prior to when this is set. So Jim's dad is back on the market again, and guess who else is back? Stifler's mom, played again by Jennifer Coolidge. That's right, Jim's dad and Stifler's mom are finally meeting. With this new plot point, I think it's also worth mentioning that Stifler's mom does get a bit more screen time this time around, which is more than I can say for a few other people who are rejoining the cast. At a certain point, I started wondering about 3 particular characters who still hadn't been reintroduced, namely Jessica, played by Natasha Lyonne, Sherman, played by Chris Owen, and Nadia, played by Shannon Elizabeth. Where were they? Well, I'll tell you, they each get 1 scene each in the last 20 minutes. Sherman, I can understand just getting a cameo. He was never that big a character. And Nadia, well, her story was over pretty much. So, yeah, I can understand her only getting a cameo too. But Jessica? I mean, I guess she was never a main character, but come on! Natasha Lyonne appears on the poster for this thing. So that's kind of false advertising. Though in her accumulated 1 minute of screen time, we do learn something about the character. Even so, she was basically Vicky's best friend in the first 2 films, and she doesn't even share this scene with Vicky. So that was kind of sad. I mean, even John Cho, who was a background character in the first 3 films, gets more screen time than she does. Even so, there are so many great callbacks in this one to the first three, and we get to see all the characters move forward. We get to see how the years have changed them, and they all just meshed so well now that they were all back on screen together. Not to mention, there's a great new subplot about Jim and this girl who we used to babysit when she was little and she's grown up now, so that's going to create some interesting conflicts and hilarity ensues. So I would say this deserves nothing less than a 9 out of 10. Awesome. By the way, before I forget, there's also one little scene that occurs towards the end of the film, which puts a rather interesting spin on things, but I'm not going to say anything more than that. According to the tagline, they say they saved the best slice of pie for last, and if that's any indication that this is going to be the last one, I can't imagine a better way to have them go out. By the way, this is rated R, so kids should stay away. But it does come in at a runtime of 1 hour 53 minutes, which I found to be the perfect runtime for a film like this. So, you can all look forward to seeing it on DVD and Blu-ray July 10th. Okay, now I'm going to pick up the pace. On to the next review. Assemble! See, in this poster, they're Legos, so that works on 2 levels. Amazing effects, awesome action sequences, brilliant writing, and top-notch performances from the entire cast make this a one real treat. And this is an all-star cast, mind you. We got Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, Chris Evans as Captain America, Mark Ruffalo taking over from Edward Norton as the Hulk, Chris Hemsworth as Thor, the always sexy Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow, Jeremy Renner joining the team as Hawkeye, all led by director Nick Fury, played by Samuel L. Jackson, as they band together to go up against Thor's evil half-brother, Loki. Oh, did I say he was Thor's half-brother? I meant he was Thor's step-brother, Loki, played by Tom Hiddleston. Oh, when I say band together, I mean at the end, because there's not a lot of camaraderie with this team. In fact, they're fighting throughout a lot of it. They're not all, oh, hunky-dory, you're my best friend, let's go kick smash. No, it's not that kind of movie. Though it's not surprising that Robert Downey Jr. gets some of the best lines in the whole movie. I mean, there's this one scene where he's arguing with Captain America and he says, "Everything that's special about you comes in a bottle." But then Cap asks him what's so special about him when he takes away the suit. He says, "Oh, I'm a genius billionaire philanthropist." Well, but that just shows his skills. He can play a total jerk, but he's just so charismatic at the same time. You gotta love it. In keeping with the performances, I definitely have to give credit to Mark Ruffalo as the Hulk. Much as I enjoyed Edward Norton, Ruffalo just really made the role his own, and this is supposed to be the exact same character, mind you. Also, I think it's worth mentioning that the Hulk only actually goes Hulk twice in the whole movie, but trust me, it is well worth the wait, and he probably looks the most realistic he ever has. Probably because Mark Ruffalo was actually playing him well in a Hulk form. He was doing all the expressions and movements and stuff. This is the first time that's actually been done, and it just looks fabulous. But hey, everybody plays their role to a T in this one. Though the one member of the team who I was a bit concerned about was Hawkeye, played by Jeremy Renner, because he was the only member who hadn't already had a movie to establish his character, aside from one very brief appearance in Thor. But you know what? I thought they did a very good job of introducing him. Though, not surprisingly, he really gets the least to do out of everybody, and in fact, you probably wouldn't believe it, but I checked IMDb, and apparently he only gets 12 minutes 44 seconds screen time. Granted, I don't think any member of the team gets nearly as much screen time as you might think, but that's just the illusion of perfect pacing. Trust me, there's never a dull moment on this ride, it's just always has something going on. Though it does take its time introducing some of the characters. I mean, it takes about 20 minutes for Iron Man to show up, and over 40 for Thor to show up, but it's well worth the wait. What more can I say except, Joss Whedon, you are a god among men. If I could even find one minor gripe about the film, it's that this race of cyborg aliens employed by Loki, we don't really get much of an explanation about them, we don't learn very much about them, but I don't think it really matters in the long run. Hey, I just realized this contains an ensemble cast of 8 unique main characters, just like my novel. Shameless plugging. Indeed. Anyway, I think it goes without saying that I give this film a near perfect 10 out of 10. Epic. Now, it is rated PG-13, so it might be a bit too intense for the young ones, and it comes in at a runtime of 2 hours 23 minutes, so it's a long one, but you can barely tell just because of the perfect pacing. But enough of my fanboy praise, let's get on to my final review. How do vampires sleep like this? Ah, that's better. Okay, anyway, it's a Tim Burton movie, people. So who's starring in it?
Johnny Depp!
And co-starring?
Helena Bonham Carter!
That's right, you're good at this. So, Depp plays Barnabas Collins, a lover turned vampire who is imprisoned in a coffin for 200 years due to his unfortunate ailment. And thus, he wakes up in 1972, where he goes to his old household and attempts to connect with his extended family members. Now, if you know me, it's no surprise that Johnny Depp is one of my favorite actors, and even though he himself in this is quite a sight, the rest of the family manages to be quite colorful on their own. Among them are Elizabeth, played by the always talented Michelle Pfeiffer, who basically acts as the head of the household. She also owns a business, and she is the mother of Chloe Grace Moretz in this one, who you may remember is playing Hit Girl in Kick-Ass, and she still manages to be quite the badass in this one, only without the strong language. There's also Dr. Julia Hoffman, played of course by Helena Bonham Carter, and she is a psychiatrist who's taken up residence with the family, and she meets with David, a little boy who claims to see ghosts, including that of his dead mother. Oh my god, it's the Sixth Sense all over again.
I see dead people.
But in all seriousness, David has lived a hard life as he has a very abusive father, and of course his mother is dead, and his father actually ended up marrying Elizabeth, so now she's his stepmother, and Chloe Grace Moretz plays his stepsister, and it's just an all-around troubled family. Oh, and of course I have to mention the gardener, Willie, played by Jackie Earle Haley, who you may remember as playing Rorschach in Watchmen, and Freddy Krueger in the reboot of A Nightmare on Elm Street. Yeah, that little badass is playing a gardener now, and he manages to be very funny. Oh yeah, and there's also David's new governess, Victoria, who apparently looks a lot like Barnabas's old lover. So that's going to cause some old flames to erupt. Oh, and of course there is our villain of the piece, a witch named Angelique, played by Eva Green, who, I'm going to be honest, didn't manage to be all that intimidating. But hey, it's a dark comedy. What can you do? Either way, the cast is solid. It's a fun premise. There's a lot of good humor in there. And I feel that for the most part, the story holds up pretty well. At least it did for the first two acts. I honestly felt the third act was where it kind of fell apart for me. I mean, they just threw so much stuff at you. And while the effects are pretty impressive, and there's a cool fight scene and such, it really didn't flow very well for me. It was just too much at one time, and then after it, I think it wrapped up way too quickly and cleanly. Don't get me wrong, it's a nice ending, it fits with the story, but it was just a bit too abrupt. It could have been paced better, and it was kind of a missed opportunity. They even threw in this really random twist, and while I didn't expect it, I guess you could consider that to be a good thing, it just comes out of nowhere, and it really has no bearing on the plot, so like, did they even need this? Going through it, I could tell like something was up there, but it just felt very unnecessary. So despite the problems I had with the third act, I feel that the first two acts were very solid, and it's still a very fun movie altogether. Not to mention it leaves room for a sequel. So with that, I think I would give it about a 7.5 out of 10. Excellent. This is rated PG-13 and comes in at a runtime of 1 hour 53 minutes, same length as American Reunion. How fitting. What's that? I'm finally finished? This calls for my sexy dance! No. Seriously though, I'm glad I could do this. There's a lot more to come in the future. I'm just gonna go collapse now. Peace.